Let's see how to schedule a project using Microsoft Project. What you're looking at is the work breakdown structure of a project called Mobile Reporting System. In order to complete Mobile Reporting System, we are told that we have to do four major things. One is performance requirements. Another one is software, hardware, and prototype. We say that mobile reporting system has four children. Children complete the parent. In other words, if you complete those four yellow things, the project is complete. What does it take to finish performance requirements? These two over here, interview users and define requirements. If you complete these two children, interview users and define requirements, performance requirements is complete. Software has four children. If you complete those four children, software is done, and hardware has two children, prototype has two children. With this work breakdown structure, we should be able to claim that if you do those 10 blue things, the project is complete. Or you can say, if you complete those four yellow things, the project is complete. On the work breakdown structure, we pick any level other than level 1, that is, and develop the network diagram. In this case, there are three levels. Level 1 is the name of the project, the green item that is. Level 2 are the yellow items, and level 3 are the blue items. We can pick either level 2 or level 3 to develop the network diagram. Reason being that completing either level means completing the project. In this example, they chose level 3 to develop the network diagram. This network diagram is telling us that the first task is interview users. Define requirements cannot start until you finish interview users. As soon as define requirements is complete, we can start design logic and purchase hardware simultaneously. Design database can start as soon as design logic is complete. Assemble hardware can start as soon as purchase hardware is complete. And code A and code B both can start simultaneously as soon as design database is complete. And integrate has three predecessors, code A, code B, and assemble hardware, which means that integrate cannot start until you finish all of these three tasks, code A, code B, and assemble hardware. And the final task, test that is, can start as soon as integrate is complete. I will now copy the work breakdown structure information to MS Project. And the work breakdown structure goes in the task name column. It might take a few seconds for it to be copied. Notice that the WBS that is copied from the Word file, does not show what is a child of what. There are no levels, unlike the Word file where we were able to say that mobile reporting system is the name of the project, and it had four, major deliverables on level 2. That's all that information is lost when you copy and paste. So what we have to do is use some indent buttons. That's how MS Project knows what is a child of what. So let me increase the font size a little bit here. Mobile reporting system is the name of the project. Performance requirements is a level 2 item. So I select that cell and I click on the right indent button right here. It's a right arrow. And if you click on that, it goes to level 2. Performance requirements has two children, if you recall, these two, interview and define requirements. So you select those two cells and click on the right indent button twice. Software is at level 2. Software has four children. So software is indented once, Design logic, design database, code A and code B will be indented twice. Hardware indented once, purchase and assemble twice. Prototype once, integrate and test twice. Now MS Project knows that there are 3 levels on this work breakdown structure, and it also knows what is a child of what parent. As you can see, there are some default dates and default durations showing up. So we'll change all that. In fact, MS Project will change all that as we start entering more and more information. Right now, this task mode column is telling us that there are certain things that are manually scheduled. So for example, these pins that you see, it means it's manually scheduled. What that means is that if you change the duration of a child, the duration of the parent does not automatically change. Most of the time we want the duration of the parent automatically changed if the duration of the child changes. So there are some cases where that's not preferred, but most often we want the parent's duration to automatically change if the child's duration changes. So I'm going to highlight the task mode column. I click on the top, the whole column gets highlighted, and I click on this auto schedule button right here. I'm moving my cursor, auto schedule, which means that if the duration of a child changes, the duration of the parent automatically changes based on, what are the relationships among tasks and so on. It automatically calculates. We have not entered the relationships yet. We'll enter all that in the predecessors column based on the network diagram given to us. Recall that the network diagram was done for level 3. In other words, only for level 3 items, we will enter the predecessor information. So let's go back to the Word file to see quickly what are the predecessor relationships for level 3 items. Interview users does not have any predecessor. So we will leave the predecessor cell blank for interview users. Define requirements has a predecessor, that is interview users. So let's enter all this information in MS Project. And MS Project will eventually create a network diagram for us based on that. So interview users, there's no predecessor, so we'll leave that alone. Define requirements has a predecessor, and that is interview users. So drop down menu, you can simply check the box here, interview users. When you check the box, what you will see is not the whole name of the task. You'll only see the row number, that is number 3 right here. Interview users is at number 3, right? So you see number 3. Okay, it means interview users is the predecessor of define requirements. Software is not in the network diagram because the network diagram was done for level 3. So design logic has a predecessor, and that is define requirements. So I check the box for define requirements. Design database has a predecessor, and that is design logic. Right there. And code A and code B have the same predecessor, which is design database. So I can even type in 7 here. Instead of choosing, I can just type in 7 and 7. Both of them have the same predecessor, which is design database. Purchase hardware has a predecessor, that is define requirements. So I can simply type in 4, or if it's easier, I can just use the drop-down menu and check the box for define requirements. Assemble hardware has a predecessor, that is purchase hardware. So I can type in 11. And integrates has 3 predecessors, code A, code B, and assemble. So I can check those boxes, or I can simply enter the row numbers separated by commas. So code B, code A, code B, and assemble. And then finally, test has a predecessor, that is integrate. So you can check the box 14. Notice that all the durations of these level 3 items by default are 1 day. And based on the predecessor relationships that we have entered, it calculated the durations of level 2 items and hence the project duration as 7 days. But we'll change all these durations based on the information given to us on the next page of the Word file. We are told that Richard is the one who will interview users, and if he does it, it'll take him 7 days. Tom will be defining the requirements, and it'll take him 2 days to do so. Notice that the resources and durations are given for only the level 3 items. The reason for that is that if you enter the durations of level 3 items, the durations of level 2 items will automatically change because of the auto scheduling that we selected in MS Project. And if the durations of the level 2 items change, the duration of the project, level 1 item that will automatically change. But before we enter the durations, it's important that we assign people first, because unless we know who's doing what task, you don't know how long that will take. For example, somebody who has more experience or more expertise can probably do things faster or that task faster than someone else. More people can perhaps do a task faster than less people. So it's important to assign resources first and then enter the durations. And before we enter the resources for each task, we will first go somewhere in MS Project and enter the names of all the resources. We are told that there's a Richard working on this project, there's a Tom, there are 3 software engineers and 4 hardware engineers. So let's enter this information first as to who all are available or working on this project. And for that, we go to View tab at the top and you go to Resource Sheet. And in the resource name column, we'll enter the resource names, Richard. I'll increase the font size again. Richard, Tom, software engineers. So I'm going to go with SWE, and hardware engineers, I say HWE for short. In most projects, you probably will have the names of the software engineers mentioned. Here we'll go with SWE for all the software engineers, with the assumption that all software engineers have the same skills and all hardware engineers have the same skills. Now, there's one Richard, one Tom, but then there are 3 software engineers and 4 hardware engineers. And for that, we have to use this column, which says max. So 100% Richard means 1 Richard, 100% Tom means 1 Tom. We are told that there are 3 software engineers. So I'm going to change it to 300%. You can simply type in 300, it becomes 300%. And 4 hardware engineers, we are told, so simply enter 400 and it becomes 400%. There's a way to change these percentages to integers, but typically they are expressed in percentages because it's easier to understand that way. For example, if somebody is working 2 hours a day on this project in an 8-hour day, it means that that person is assigned 25% to this project, correct? Now, let's look at some other columns here. Even though we will not be using all of these columns, it's a good idea to look at these columns and see what they can do. So that's resource name. We know what that is. We just enter the names of the resources. And there's a type column. If you use the drop-down menu here, Richard is not material. So we will not use or choose material for Richard. And you can select some miscellaneous cost, as a resource. For example, let's say a resource is a facility. You're organizing an event and you're renting a facility. So your resource is a facility, and it's not material. It's not some person who is doing the work. Maybe you just want the software to calculate the cost for that resource whenever you assign that resource, in this case, a facility, to a particular task. Okay, so you can use the other uh, options as well, material and cost, depending on what those resources are. Right now they're all people, so I'm leaving them as work. If it is material, you can enter the labels of the materials. An MS Project uses the first letter of the resource name as initials. Instead of using the words, you can use initials and go with that when you're assigning resources. Not everyone comes from the same department, so if you want to enter the group name or the department name for each resource, you can do that right there. And we already discussed what this max units does. It tells us how many people of each resource are available. Standard rate. Typically, you don't know the standard rate of people working within your company, even though you may be their supervisor or their project manager. But let's enter. Maybe some of these are contractors and you know the information. So I'm just going to randomly make up some standard rates for these people. Let's say Richard makes $100 an hour. I simply typed in 100 there and it became $100 per hour. Let's say Tom makes $125 an hour. Software engineers, let's say $200 an hour. Hardware engineers, let's say 150. Overtime rate, I'm not going to enter anything there, but just know that MS Project assumes that people work from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, and then 12 to 1, they take a lunch break, and then they come back to work from 1 to 5. You can change all that. There are some nice options to do so. But right now, just know that MS Project by default assumes an 8-hour work day. Okay, 9 hours, but there's a 1-hour lunch break. And if you assign somebody for more than 8 hours, the overtime rate kicks in. Okay, so we will not be using overtime right now, but there is that option that one can use. Cost per use, if you are using a facility, for example, once, let's say that is $1,000. And if you're using it twice, it's going to automatically calculate it as $2,000. Okay, so that's cost per use of a facility or machine or what have you. Prorated is for the hourly rates. If somebody is making $100 per hour, if you assign somebody to a task for 2 hours, it'll calculate $200 as the cost for those 2 hours. That's your prorated. And MS Project uses a standard calendar, which assumes that every day is a working day, as long as it's not a Saturday or a Sunday. If you want to declare holidays, you have to declare it separately. The reason probably is that this software is used in so many countries, you have to declare your own local holidays. All right, let's go back to the previous view. It's called as the Gantt chart view that we saw, where we had the work breakdown structure, right? So I click on the Gantt chart. I'll show you something called as Gantt chart as well. But to go to the previous view, you click on this Gantt chart, left side top, click on that, you go back to this view that we saw before. Now that we know who all are available on this project, let's now start entering the resources or assigning the resources for level 3 items, and then we'll enter the resources based on the resource names. So now because we entered the resource names in the resource sheet, it's very easy to now assign resources. Interview users, we know, will be done by Richard. So I drop down menu I use here, I check the box Richard. Tom will define requirements. So Tom. Design logic will be done by 2 software engineers. Unfortunately, if I check SWE twice, it won't work. There are a couple of ways of doing it, but easy way for me to show is you double click on design logic anywhere on the row, and this pops up, and you go to resources tab right here, and from the drop down menu here, select SWE, and we are told that 2 software engineers will be doing this design logic. I change it to 200% there. You can manually type in, SWE and those square brackets and 200% in that. That's the other way. Design database will be done by 2 software engineers, more than one, so I'll double click. So resources, SWE, 200%. Code A will be done by 1.5 software engineers. Probably somebody is working half time there, or it could be 3 people working half time. So SWE 150%. And code B, the same thing, 1.5 software engineers, we are told. So SWE 150%. Purchase hardware will be done by 2 hardware engineers. So more than one. So I'll double click. Now it's hardware engineers, not software. So HWE 200%. We are told that assemble hardware will be done by 1 hardware engineer. So there's only one, so I don't have to double click. I can just use the drop down menu, HWE. Integrate will be done by Richard, and test will be done by Tom. All this information is given to us in the Word file. So I just entered that information. Now, we are also told that if Richard interviews users, it'll take him 7 days. So I can just type in 7 in there. The default duration unit is days. So it'll automatically change to days, 7 days. Define requirements will take 2 days, we are told. So this is 2. You won't enter anything for software, right? Nobody told us how long software will take. All we are told is the duration for the children of software. So let's look at the children's durations, 3, 2, 7, and 5. So this is 3, 2, 7, and 5. Hardware, we don't know how long that will take. Purchase and assemble hardware will take 1 day each. So I'll not change those durations, default durations of 1 day. Integrate will take 3 days, we are told. So we'll change it to 3, and test, we are told, will take 1 day. So we will not touch the test duration of 1 day. Notice that as you entered the durations of the children, the durations of the parents automatically changed. And then finally, the duration of the project changed to 25 days. I'm doing this on 26th May 2020. So that's why you see the start date as 26th May 2020. And the project will complete. It is scheduled to finish on 29th June of 2020. Notice that between those two dates, it's more than 25 days. So that 25 days means 25 working days. So these 25 days don't include Saturday and Sunday, because by default, they are assumed to be holidays in MS Project. Now, I move this vertical line, right here. We see something called as Gantt chart. The advantage of Gantt chart is that you can easily see the progress. Once you start doing the project, you can easily see the progress thanks to this calendar right there. So as you start doing the project, you can say, I finished 50% of this task. All that will show up on this Gantt chart. Okay, right now we will do something else that we learned manually using critical path method. I want to show all that, how MS Project will give us all that output very easily. So we have entered all the information, or most of the information already. I'll show you some things like changing the start date and all that. All right, let's change a few things, such as project start date, and maybe we'll enter some holidays as well. And also see the project network diagram with the critical path. All that is there already done for us. We just have to go to the place or places where all that is shown in MS Project. While we are here, I'll also enter the cost information. We already know the hourly wages of these people. So MS Project has already calculated the total cost for this project. All I have to do is there's this thing called add new column. I'll click on that, and a lot of options to choose from. I'll simply type in cost. So I see the cost right there. I select that, and based on the hourly wages we entered for the resources, the software has calculated the total project cost as $59,400. It also has calculated, as you can see, the cost for each of these individual level 2 items. And of course, each of the level 3 items as well. If you don't have the hourly wages, you can type in, any information on cost you have in these cells here. The software will calculate, the total cost for the project at the top based on the information you directly entered in the cost column. Now let's see how to change the project start date, and maybe we'll enter a holiday as well. Project tab at the top, and then project information. Let's say the start date of this project is, say, June 1, which is a Monday. And I click OK. The finish date has now become 3rd July 2020. Start date, as we said, as we entered, became 1st of June. 25 days is still 25 days because it's, again, 25 working days, regardless of the start and finish dates. Now let's show a holiday. I go to project, change working time. I'm not sure if we have a holiday between those two dates, June 1 and 3rd of July, but let's make up a holiday. Let's say June 15th is a holiday. So so here's where you enter the holidays, exceptions it says. I'll say special day. So June 15, Monday. Let's say it's a 1-day holiday. So starts on June 15 and ends on June 15. And I click on OK. And you will see now the finish date is 6th of July, probably because of this holiday of June 15th. Another weekend, happened between the start and finish of the project. So that's why the end date moved to 6th of July. All right, now let's look at the network diagram. View, network diagram. And I zoom out by clicking on this minus sign here at the bottom right corner. And there it is. This one here is the name of the project. In the Gantt chart view, I selected the first row. That's why it's showing up in dark right there. But that's the name of the project. These are the level 2 items. And the level 3 items are what are shown on the network diagram, because only for those we entered the predecessors. You can guess what this red path is. It's the critical path. And notice that, this one right here, the hardware deliverable is blue, and the other 3 on level 2 are red, because the hardware deliverable does not have any child on the critical path. And the other ones are red because at least one child of those is on the critical path. If you want to go back to the previous view, again, you click on Gantt chart icon on the top left corner, and we go back here. Now let's see the earliest start date, earliest finish date, latest start date, latest finish date, and the slack of each task. All that is already done for us. We just have to go to that place. So you go to View, then Tables, and you select Schedule. And now you see the earliest start of each task. It simply says start, but that's earliest start. Finish means earliest finish date. And the latest start, MS Project calls it as late start. And the latest finish date, it calls it as the latest or late finish. The total slack that you see here is nothing but the slack that we calculated when we solved the critical path method examples manually. The difference between total slack and free slack is total slack is how much you can delay a task without delaying the project. And free slack, which is rarely used, is how much you can delay a task without delaying the start date of the immediate successor. the next task. We can also show the critical path on the Gantt chart. So I move this vertical line to the left. Now we see the Gantt chart. So in order to see the critical path here, all you have to do is go to Format and check the box that says Critical Tasks. And that's it. I hope that you found this brief tutorial on MS Project useful.